Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Team USA men's hockey team outclassed the competition at the Winter Olympics once again. Also, the new NBA All-Star format is actually pretty good. And who's going to be better in 2026? The Detroit Lions or the Green Bay Packers? I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
Despite a slow start, the USA men's hockey team sealed a perfect Olympic group stage 3-0 by taking down Germany 5-1 on Sunday. Locked On NHL Game Night hosts Eddie Garcia and TJ Chalot recap the Olympic action.
Yeah, they needed it to be convincing. I mean, the first two games, there was clearly some getting to know yous and some chemistry issues there. And I think they strictly won those games because when you boil down talent, they're just that much better. And even when you don't have the chemistry and you don't have the communication, you're still going to beat their opponents that they had played coming into those games, you know, Latvia. And this was the biggest test. When you looked at the schedule and you looked at the prelims, this is a Germany team that boasts a lot of talent with Stützle and JJ Peterka, Draisaitl. This was certainly the game, and if you were going to put it all together and get ready for the next round and have a good game, this was the one to do it. I wasn't that confident going in, but they surprised me and jumping out to a 5-0 lead, and for all intents and purposes, they shut out Germany in this one. I know they got the goal halfway through the third, but this was a strong performance. I think a lot of questions were answered in this one.
Austin Matthews had 2 goals and an assist. Matthew Tkachuk of the Panthers, 2 assists. Jake Sanderson had 2 assists. And Connor Hellebuyck finished with 1 goal allowed on 24 shots. We talked a little bit earlier. We had a couple of the Minnesota Wild's defense and forwards chipping in. They've got 3 players involved for Team USA. Let's get a check on them with the host of Locked On Minnesota Wild, and that is Seth Topol.
We're finally in the 50-degree range here in Minnesota, so watching Team USA take care of business against Germany, watching the Minnesota Wild contingent continue to perform well, we're throwing up some steaks on the grill. Let's talk about what we saw from Brock Faber, Quinn Hughes, and Matt Boldy. Boldy continues to be a noticeable part of Team USA. He had half dozen shots on goal and was just pestering the Germans the entire game. Brock Faber with a goal, so him and Boldy both have scored in the Olympics so far. And Quinn Hughes, we call him Legolas at Locked On Wild because he's just raining assists down from up top, and he just continues to impress. He's got 4 assists. Minnesota Wild players doing pretty good for Team USA. Team USA taking the 2nd seed, so we'll see how the Minnesota Wild continue to cook here in the Olympics. For more on the Minnesota Wild Team USA contingent, as well as the rest of the Olympic players throughout the Minnesota Wild roster, make sure you follow along with Locked On Wild wherever you listen to your podcasts.
All right, we thank Seth Topol for that. I guess appropriate that a pretty good contingent from the state of hockey is representing the United States in this one. I'm trying to think, and I don't know if I can come up with anybody. I mean, Austin Matthews has showed up. We've seen the Tkachuk brothers do their thing. The Hughes brothers are doing their thing. I don't know if there's anyone that I can really think of for the U.S. who that I even kind of are struggling to think I have been disappointed in. I think everyone's contributing. Everyone's playing their part, playing their role. I don't know that there's anyone I would say, well, I've got to see more from that guy. I think it's a pretty good mix at this point through 3 games for the U.S.
Yeah, 100%. And even the guys that were controversial picks there, Brock Nelson, he's got himself a 2-goal game. JT Miller was killing off some penalties today and helping out, blocking shots and just getting in shooting lanes. So it really is. The team mentality is carrying through with Team USA. They just got to hope that they can continue this trend forward because we've seen them, I don't want to call it at their worst, but we've seen them play some rocky hockey. So we'll see how they go forward here because they're going to be getting the best as, especially when they get into the medal rounds, if they can get into the medal rounds. So right now, the Team USA is playing a good teamwork, and maybe some of those controversial picks, the Brock Nelsons, the JT Millers, and everybody wanted Jason Robertson and a couple other guys. Maybe those picks were there for that consistency and for that just makeup to build this roster to be the way it is so that they can get a good balance of young players and a good balance of veterans who have been in tight spots in some advanced games like this. So it's working out pretty good so far. 3-0 through 3 games. That's the best you could ask for.
Connor Hellebuck, I mean, not really challenged too much. Early on, his first start, he had some issues with rebound control, I thought, but he was fine in this game. And you know, we talked about it the other day, and Ian McLaren from Locked On Bruins said he didn't think we'd see Jeremy Swayman again, even as the backup. I agreed with him, and Jake Ottinger was the backup in this one as well. So it looks like it's going to be Hellebuck 1, Ottinger 2 the rest of the way, barring any kind of injuries.
Yeah, and I said the same thing in a text chat with some friends yesterday. Is I don't think we're going to see Swayman. I think that goal that he gave up in yesterday's game, the long-range shot from basically the red line, might have been the doom for him in the Olympics. You have to be a little bit better than that in the Olympics. You have to be a little bit more awake than that, not allow that kind of goal. So I'm happy with Hellebuck and Ottinger, and I think they're going to ride Hellebuck heavy going forward. Not that Ottinger can't get it done, but I just think that he's the hot hand right now. And in these situations, in Olympics, in postseason runs, you ride your hot hand.
And certainly going forward for the USA, I mean, you know, they weren't tested too much in their first 2 games. This one, a little bit more competition, but it's going to get a lot better a lot sooner if the road holds up that they would have to take to potentially getting to play for gold. So I think this is an encouraging final step, getting the bye now and then heading forward, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with you. If you're Team USA, you're looking at one team, and that's Canada. That's the team that you have to model your game after. And you pretty much, if you want to get to the gold medal round, that's who you're going to see on the other side. Theoretically, of course, anything could happen, right? It is the Olympics. But that's the team that you have to look at as your biggest opposition going forward. But you, of course, don't want to look over, you know, whether it's Sweden or Latvia, whoever comes out of the next round and, you know, ends up playing the U.S., which I'm sure we'll get into the matchups coming up later. You don't want to overlook those teams either, but you really want to look at Canada and see what they're doing and how they're running the table and make sure you can match that energy.
Stay up to date all year on the NHL and, of course, the Olympic hockey by subscribing to Locked On NHL on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. You're Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, the NBA All-Star Game wasn't actually that bad. Before we get to that, the BYU Cougars are losing their veteran leader right before the NCAA tournament. The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking into the events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports that you care about the most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. It's the building drama of curling matches, races decided by inches or fractions of a second. Popular and niche events become much watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. BYU star Richie Sanders announced Sunday that he tore his ACL in Saturday's win over Colorado, an injury that ends his college career almost as soon as the game began. It's a heartbreaking way for his college career to finish, a career that saw him grow into one of the Big 12's most dangerous shot makers, a first-team all-conference pick, a 1,500-point scorer. Now number 22, BYU turns to freshman A.J. Debansa and point guard Robert Wright to shoulder the load starting Wednesday at number 1 Arizona. Replacing the production is one thing. That's hard enough already, but replacing the heart and soul of a team, well, that's another. The Raiders are staying in the Clint Kubiak tree. Las Vegas hired Seahawks quarterback coach Andrew Jonico as offensive coordinator, reuniting him with Kubiak after previous stops together in Minnesota, New Orleans, and Seattle. The duo inherits an offense that flatlined in 2025, last in points, last in rushing, last in total yards, and now faces a reset with the number 1 pick coming in the 2026 draft. Kubiak says he'll handle play calling, but Jonico's background developing quarterbacks will be crucial, especially with Indiana star Fernando Mendoza, widely expected to be the selection at the top. If Lamar Jackson is traded this offseason, Locked On NFL host Tyler Rowland believes there's one team that would fit perfectly.
I'm looking at some options for Lamar Jackson coming off an up and down season in Baltimore. They don't make the playoffs. They fire John Harbaugh. They bring in a guy in Declan Doyle to be the offensive coordinator who is literally the same age as Lamar Jackson. I think that there are some reasons why Lamar may not be happy in Baltimore, may want a change. And when I look around the NFL at who could maybe entice Lamar Jackson and what would be a good fit, I can look no further than the Atlanta Falcons. I see all of the talent that they have on offense. That team is just begging for a quarterback. I think, maybe growing up being such a big Michael Vick fan, wanting to see a quarterback with that kind of style and that kind of skill set in Atlanta makes a lot of sense to me as well. It's like a warm and fuzzy blanket, it makes me feel comfortable. I think that Lamar on the Atlanta Falcons would immediately vault them to one of the favorites in the NFC and clearly would be the favorite in the division there. Am I off base, or do you see the fit the way that I do?
I mean, I don't think it's a bad fit at all. Kevin Stefanski, I think, is a respected guy, right? I mean, he got the gig right away after being let go by Cleveland. I think a lot of people across the NFL look at that Browns job and say he didn't have a quarterback and he got stuck with Deshaun Watson in that ridiculous situation. So he's a good play caller, smart offensive mind, has worked with quarterbacks, a lot of quarterbacks throughout his career. Bijan Robinson, obviously, is a really good running back, one of the best in the league. You could argue the best in the league. Drake London is no joke. Maybe you bring back Kyle Pitts. You got the building blocks there. And if you're Atlanta, Tyler, do you really believe in Michael Penix after all the injuries? It's like every single year he plays football, he gets a significant injury. Do you believe in Kirk Cousins? I would not at this point of his career. So maybe you can try to deal Michael Penix and picks for Lamar Jackson. The other team that kind of makes sense to me here is just because we had heard some of this going back a couple of years ago, but let's not forget that Jackson is from Pompano Beach. So that's in Florida last time I checked. Miami Dolphins want to move away from Tua Tagovailoa. You've got Jalen Waddle. You've got Devon Achane. Yeah, you get to stay in the AFC. The Dolphins are desperate to contend and bring in a big name. If they could move off Tua, which I doubt, but if they could move off Tua and bring in Lamar Jackson, what a massive upgrade for the Dolphins.
The NBA gods giveth and the NBA gods taketh away on All-Star Sunday. A new format invigorating the All-Star game. Guys actually playing hard. Kawhi Leonard looking like Kawhi Leonard, by the way, looking like Kawhi Leonard has looked for the last 2 months. He's been maybe the best player in the NBA over the last few weeks here. And it looked like a dead deal, not a done deal, a dead deal. The All-Star game was over. And I understand the last round did not, go great. It wasn't like everything was as competitive as it had been early on. But guess what? The conversation for this new multi-team round robin style where you have smaller teams, smaller benches, guys can't just float around. The early returns are good. And so long as guys are trying at least marginally hard, this is going to be fun basketball. When you get the best players in the world and they're trying at least a little, you're generally going to get good basketball. But this was all overshadowed by crazy drama surrounding Kevin Durant. And did he or did he not have a burner account that featured all sorts of wild things? And that became one of the big storylines of All-Star Sunday when you have this different format that actually worked. And this has been something that the NBA has been fighting. The individual players are such big star players. They're so famous. They're so impactful. They're so meaningful to the game, to the popularity of the game, that something as trivial as something that happened on Twitter that we may or may not have happened on Twitter. We don't even know the truth behind all of this. But just because there was this conversation, when you look at the conversations being had online, it did in a lot of ways actually overshadow the game. And the NBA, they're struggling with tanking right now. They're struggling with this All-Star format. The All-Star Saturday is, there was no one in the arena for All-Star Saturday. So it's time for that just to go quietly into that good night. But this could have been a moment where you're celebrating all of this, and yet there's drama hanging over all of it. Maybe it's all good. Maybe it's all good for the league to have all of this stuff be a part of the conversation. I'm not so sure. But I did like the new NBA All-Star game format. That's the good news. Stay up to date all year on the NBA by subscribing to Locked On NBA on your favorite podcast app. Coming up, do the Lions have any chance of surpassing Green Bay in 2026? Who's going to have the better 2026, the Packers or the Lions? Tony Wiggins and Matt Williamson both agreed the answer is pretty obvious on a recent episode of Locked On NFL.
Yeah, and I don't think they turn off physicality. What I think they do is they start leading with finesse.
Okay.
And just naturally, if you're leading with finesse and dialing it up and throwing it around a lot and trying to get people open and make big plays, sometimes is a natural regression away from physicality. All right, let's do it. Better or worse? Who is going to have the better? And we can qualify what better is, but who's going to have the better season between the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions in 2026, in Matt Williamson's opinion?
I'm going with Green Bay. Still the younger roster. I still think there's more ascending players on this squad than the Lions. Now, Green Bay doesn't have their first round pick, and the Lions do. That's a big deal. But I also will bet on Love getting better more than I'll bet on Goff getting better. I agree with Rosso. They both are quality players. So not an easy one, though. Not an easy one. I wonder if the Lions' windows not slamming shut, but slowly closing.
Usually I have to be the one who comes on here and defends the Packers. This time I don't. I do think we are underrating generally the Lions. I think if I had to pick the NFC North today, I would pick the Packers, the Lions, and the Bears. And I know everyone was very excited about the Bears, and Caleb Williams had some great fourth quarter comebacks and made some incredible throws late. He was still one of the least accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. It was still one of the worst defenses in the NFL that required a monumental amount of turnovers to be good. And teams that lead the league in turnover margin and lead the league in turnovers generally, on average, they lose about 2 games the following season. That would put the Bears next year at 9-8. I would expect each of the Lions and the Packers to win more than 10 games next year. The conversation is the right one, the Packers or the Lions in the NFC North. The Bears are a distant third. And by the way, our friends at FanDuel agree. And finally, Kansas State pulled the plug on the Jerome Tang era Sunday night, firing the fourth-year coach for cause after a disastrous season and a viral post-game rant that clearly crossed the line with the administration. Tang had blasted his own players after a home blowout to Cincinnati, saying that his players do not deserve to wear this uniform. This was last Wednesday. The school responded on Sunday by claiming the comments brought public disrepute, embarrassment, and ridicule to K-State. And so out the door, Tang goes. The Wildcats are 10-15 overall, 1-11 in the Big 12, and sitting alone in last place, a year removed from missing the tournament and 2 years removed from an Elite Eight run that once made Tang look like a home run hire. The worst part, there's nearly $19 million left on his extension through 2030. How quickly things have changed for what once was viewed as an upstart program in the Big 12. Coming up, we've got a top 5 showdown between Houston and Iowa State on the college hardwood. So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.